Karen Elliot House, on Saudi Arabia, its people, past, religion, faultlines and future. On Saudi Arabia, its people, past, religion, faultlines and future, by Karen Elliot House, takes us on an insightful journey into the inner workings of this enigmatic nation. The book uncovers the complex structures of power, highlighting the role of religion, social structure, and oil wealth in maintaining the monarchy's rule. Delving into aspects such as Saudi Arabian lifestyle and religious practices, the book also explores the growing influence of technology and social media, and its impact on the country's desire for change. The role of women in society, youth rebellion, and the education system are discussed, alongside the impending economic challenges the country faces due to its heavy reliance on oil and foreign labor. The introduction and conclusion below will encapsulate the key highlights and overarching message of this book summary.
Absolute power in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, a nation ruled by the royalty, gives absolute power to the king who nominates top religious leaders, appoints judges and parliament members. The regions of Saudi Arabia, ruled by the princes with blood ties to the king, has a pristine public image with the help of the king's relatives who are in charge of media outlets. The king also ensures that social and civic organizations are against any political protests which could threaten the monarchy. The vast wealth of the royals comes from the nation's primary driver of the economy, petrol oil. However, the king's power over the people is mainly due to religious influence through Wahhabism, a puritanical form of Islam. Since the royal family is considered to be Allah's representatives on earth, this absolute power arrangement guarantees that the newly formed monarchy would be followed with unquestioning loyalty. The formality of Muslim prayers in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, the Muslim prayers, salat, are a formal ritual that people must perform 5 times a day, and there is only one proper way to perform them. The prayer ritual ends with prostrations towards Mecca, a submissive gesture to Allah's will. Despite this uniformity in prayer celebration, disagreements exist within the nation's religious leadership concerning men and women's social interactions. Nonetheless, the 2009 dispute about men and women mixing at the kingdom's new universities led to the head of the vice police order his officers to stop interfering with public spaces' socialization. The public dispute saw Wahhabi Islam rules as unwavering and absolute start to fall. Isolation and change in Saudi Arabia. The harsh desert conditions of the Saudi Arabian peninsula have contributed to a society that is isolated and focused on survival. The monarchy enforces cultural and religious barriers that discourage social gatherings, but modern technology, such as social media, is beginning to unite Saudi Arabians and boost their criticism of government neglect. Women's rights in Saudi Arabia. Despite powerful female figures in Islamic history, Saudi Arabian women are still fighting for recognition outside the home. The country has a societal framework that restricts women's movement and denies them the right to drive, with male relatives exerting control over their daily lives. However, the Arab Spring in 2011 saw many Saudi women participate in organized protests, including drive-ins, which led to King Abdullah making symbolic gestures towards women's rights. In 2011, he announced that women could vote in the 2015 parliament elections, and since 2013, women have been eligible for appointment to the Consultative Assembly of Saudi Arabia, which proposes new laws. Nevertheless, these reforms were more symbolic than substantial, as political bodies in the country held little power. The struggle for women's rights in Saudi Arabia continues. Saudi Arabia's youthful rebellion. Saudi Arabia's young generation rebels against traditional values and authoritarian rule. The nation's high youth population has led to a significant momentous challenge for parents and religious establishments. The rebellion is expressed in different forms, including religious extremism, vandalism, wearing Western clothes, and creating thought-provoking films. These rebellious acts have put enormous pressure on the government to embrace reform. One example includes Faraz Bugna, who made the powerful short film, We Are Screwed, which depicted the deplorable living conditions of poor neighborhoods in Riyadh. The film went viral with nearly 1 million views in Saudi Arabia alone and resulted in the arrest and subsequent release of Bugna after 15 days of intense public pressure and outcry on social media. The rebellion's long-term impact on the country and its people remains to be seen, as it could either lead to positive reforms or continued suppression. The royal landscape of Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, there exists a unique royal landscape where the founding King Ibn Saud fathered 44 sons and numerous daughters, leaving the nation filled with princes who have a lot of spare time on their hands. With limited high-ranking governmental positions available, most princes are given a monthly allowance of about $19,000 and are left to find their own way. Despite this, many of them try to be of service. As an example, Prince Abdullah, a grandson of the founding king, opened a successful paper recycling business in 1991 with a bank loan, and later wrote a book comparing U.S. sports culture to that of Saudi Arabia. His observations on how American athletes take responsibility for their mistakes, versus Saudi athletes blaming external causes for their defeats, aimed at spurring greater responsibility and proactivity among Saudis. Education in Saudi Arabia. Education in Saudi Arabia has been plagued with several challenges, which can be traced back to the absence of a public education system before the 1960s. Despite investing hundreds of billions of dollars in the education system, the country's education rate remains extremely low due to various reasons, including a lack of good teachers. Saudi Arabian students were among the least competent in multiple subjects, leading to a high unemployment rate, especially among youth. To address this, King Abdullah tripled education spending and appointed a new Minister of Education and the first woman to receive such a high-ranking position. However, religious leaders' opposition to teaching subjects other than Islamic theology and history continues to pose challenges to education in the country. Overcoming the downside of oil richness. Saudi Arabia's economy has become dangerously dependent on oil and foreign labor. However, the country now faces the fact that oil won't be able to sustain their economy forever. With the oil reserves being depleted and no sign of any new sources, the country will be drowning in debt by 2030. They are also heavily reliant on imported labor, which contributes to high unemployment rates and poverty. The country has been struggling to solve these problems for years, and although they've spent billions on the public sector, it reinforces the dependency on oil and foreign workers. The only solution is for the Saudi middle class to compete in the private sector and find new revenue streams.
Karen Elliot House's book, On Saudi Arabia, Its People, Past, Religion, Faultlines and Future, provides an eye-opening account of the complex societal landscape within this powerful and enigmatic country. The combination of the ruling monarchy's influence, the deeply ingrained role of religion, and the wealth generated by oil have shaped Saudi Arabia's unique societal structures. However, the emergence of new technologies, social media, and youth rebellion suggests change is on the horizon. Women continue to push boundaries, seeking greater recognition and opportunities within society. While significant improvements are needed in the education sector and economic diversification, the current course of growth and development in Saudi Arabia remains inextricably linked to the core elements of power, royalty, religion, and oil.